Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Ovrerfilled, the podcast. And I am Dr. Brooke Messer, and I am joined by my optometry besties, Jamie Kuzner and Jason Jedlicka. As you can see, if you watched us last time, you saw that Jamie was missing, and she fought tooth and nail to rejoin us on the podcast. We had a little.
Or like we fought tooth and nail to get her back on with us.
Yeah,
so
Jamie's
they had to retain me on a new contract.
Yeah, we came to terms, and now the trio is back together again. So we're really happy about that. Welcome back, Jamie. Thank you for joining us. We're now in season 2 of Ovrerfilled, the podcast. And as you know, this podcast is about what brings us joy within our careers as optometrists and specialty lens fitters. So let's start with that. Jamie, why don't you bring us up to speed on where you've been and what you've been doing in the last, month or so, and what has recently bring you some joy?
Sure. So yes, I did not leave the podcast. We've just all been very busy. So actually, I've been doing a lot of workshops. So one of the things that I love doing is that I actually go into a lot of different practices in the Midwest and fit their patients with them with ZenLens. So I love doing that, like working with other colleagues, working with their patients, their staff. So sometimes it does pull me out of my office and out of things in my life. But I don't know, you just kind of think about all the patients that you impact in your practice. But if you can go and train another doctor in a different state, and then they can have a ripple effect and help out hundreds of patients like that, that's super cool. So even though if I only see 3 patients with that doctor, I just think about all the patients in that area that's going to get help now. They didn't have it before. So I've been doing a lot of that. We've had a lot of CE lectures. So it's been a busy season. But otherwise, I mean, we had Thanksgiving last week. My oldest turns 6 tomorrow for her birthday. So I guess I was going to joke and say my Ovrerfilled was I'm excited that she is not making us go to the Rainforest Cafe for her birthday, which I cannot stand. There is a Rainforest Cafe 15 minutes from my house. So my kids always want to go there all the time, like we're on vacation. And my husband jokes that it's like expensive Applebee's, essentially, with animals everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to her birthday celebrations this weekend. So what about you, Jason?
Yeah. How about you, Jason?
Well, I'm going to wait till I share mine because
Okay.
it's going to lead into our topic today. So how about if you go first, Brooke?
Yeah, we had a nice Thanksgiving too. We went with the in-laws to Wisconsin Dells and did some water parking. One exciting thing that happened there was Hunter actually slipped and smacked open his chin. So we had a Thanksgiving visit to urgent care, but he's a trooper. And then yesterday, my kids had their Christmas concert at school. So I got to sneak out after lunch, take the afternoon off. My mom came over from Dickinson, and Brian's parents were able to come. My dad wasn't able to, but so we got to watch the kids sing all their Christmas music. And this was fun because Hunter's in pre-K, and it's the same school that Nora goes to as a second grader. So they were in the concert together, which was really fun.
Nice.
Last spring, the school has like a silent auction fundraiser, and we bid on front row tickets to the concert and won them. So we were front and center for the kids, and it was just really nice to have the grandmas and grandpas there and watch the kids, kind of show off the work they put in. So that was a really nice day yesterday. So with that, let's move right into our topic. And we're talking about taking, scleral lenses improve lives in so many ways, improving comfort and vision. But with the advancements in technology, we're taking it a step further. So Jason, why don't you kick us off with our topic today?
Yeah, so I'm just going to play a video of a patient because, again, Ovrerfilled, one of the beauties of what we do is we get to give our patients great vision outcomes sometimes. And so this video is a patient who I've seen for several years. She has keratoconus in her left eye, much worse than the right. The right eye actually does pretty well with just a soft toric. She's 20/20-ish in that eye with just a soft toric. The left eye is much worse. We've only ever gotten her seeing about 20/30 to 20/40 range with her scleral lens in the past, which she was fine with. But recently with more opportunity to add higher order aberration correction to lenses, she came in last summer for her annual, and I just offered her the opportunity to add it. She's already wearing a lens that's comfortable, and she wears it every day. Makes it super easy just to say, I can reorder it with these extra optics. And so we did. And when she came back to pick up her lens, she was like 2015.
Wow.
So better than she was in her good eye. And so I just asked her if I could record her telling her a little bit of her story. So let's see if this works. Okay. So this is Jana. And Jana, how long have we seen each other now? For like 8 or 9 years, maybe?
Yes.
Because I've been here for 10 and you've been here most of that time.
Yes.
Okay, so Jana, if you don't mind me sharing, you have keratoconus in mainly the left eye.
Yes.
Right eye's not bad. Right eye, we just wear a soft lens.
Yes.
And the left eye's been in a scleral now for all these years.
Yes.
Okay. And the left eye vision was always never near as good as the right.
Definitely.
Okay. And then just recently, we were able to refit the left eye with a HOA correcting lens. And today we just put it on for the first time.
Yes.
And read the 2020 row.
Yes.
And so again, just tell me what you told me about how your vision compares now and everything.
I've not had vision in my left eye this good for decades. I'm so excited that I can read the 2020 line. Also, the vision is crisp. The letters are dark. They're clear. Better than the right eye now with just the regular soft toric lens in it.
Yeah.
It's so exciting after all these years and different lenses trying that this wonderful new development that you've made is working. It's
Well, I didn't make it, but I'm just happy to share it with the world as we roll it out.
Develop it as you
right.
developed it over
And so
time.
my colleagues on the podcast are also doing this same stuff, so we all get to share these great experiences. But
Yes, it's amazing. It's wonderful, and it's so exciting.
well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
And thank you for working with me for so many years to get this wonderful vision.
Go. Anyway, so that's
That's awesome.
one of the cool moments. And so we're gonna talk today about HOA correcting lenses. Yeah. So we all three have the opportunity with aberrometers to do this, and we've all probably had plenty of fun, exciting moments over the last few years. I like to say that when we first started fitting a lot of scleral lenses, we used to say, Brooke and I did a lecture together like years ago where we called it like changing lives with scleral lenses. And it was like, you take people that had been in lenses that they didn't particularly like for years, and you put them in a scleral and they're just like in tears over how happy they are. Well, the advent of HOA correction on sclerals is kind of like that whole thing all over again. You're taking people that have genuinely been happy with their scleral lenses, and you're giving them that whole other experience of bringing them to tears again with how much better their vision can be. And it doesn't work out that way every single time, but it works that way a lot. So maybe we can talk today about like how it works and patient selection for this sort of stuff, because I think that's pretty critical.
Yeah, I think, could you guys share on picking out good candidates? Are there patients that are, they can't see the 2020 line through their scleral? And is there anybody that you wouldn't try it on? Who are your candidates?
Oh, this is what I've been doing at my office since I just got my aberrometer this year. So what I've been doing is I just added it to my protocol that we screen everybody in their scleral lens on top of the lens. And then I take the device or the printout basically into the exam lane, and I talk to people about it. And it's interesting, right? Because sometimes people have really high HOAs and they say like they don't notice any issues. Okay. And so I'll kind of talk to them about it and say like this technology exists if it's something that you want to move forward with. And it's funny that I had a patient that I'm like, how are you handling all this glare? And he's like, I don't really notice it. And then he came back to his follow-up in 2 weeks and he was like, I didn't realize I was noticing it until you pointed it out, right? Because he just thought that that's just the best it was going to be. So I've just started kind of screening everybody and telling them about it and offering it as an option. And a lot of patients are just saying like, yes, especially because they know, my office, similar to yours, Jason, it's like, we're always doing the next best thing. And I think the patients have grown to expect that, right? So even though they're happy now, like it can be better. So if I'm seeing someone that's measuring, I don't know what your threshold is, Jason, but especially if they're like higher than like a 0.7, I'm definitely encouraging them to do an HOA lens. If someone is pretty low, when I measure them where it's kind of borderline, I'll just kind of offer it as an option because sometimes it doesn't make a huge improvement for them versus the cost and extra follow-ups. What are you doing, Jason?
It's definitely a cost thing, and so I'm not screening everybody for it, but everybody who comes back who's in a scleral lens already, who's not reading 20/20 or 20/20 minus, you know what I mean, 20/25 plus. Anybody who you look at them, you go, gosh, you should see better. You know, like your cornea is clear. There's no reason it shouldn't be better than this. I just explained to him, hey, look, there's a new technology that we can add this extra correction to the front of your lens that we could never add before. And it adds, a few $100s per lens. And if you're interested, I can screen you and see how much I think will help. And then from there, I'm like you. So if we screen them and that number comes out, 0.67, whatever, the RMS, the residual HOAs are a point where I think that it's going to make a difference. What I don't want to do is I don't want to do this on a patient and have them be like, yeah, I don't know, I didn't seem that much better. I want it to be like, wow, this is a lot better. And so you've got to pick and choose the patients. The patients that I've seen over the last, 3-4 years since we started doing this, where we were underwhelmed with their outcome, were the patients who were already pretty much 20/20, but just had these vague complaints of, well, I have this glare, I have this or that. It doesn't always resolve them. Your bread and butter cases, your home runs always are your cones. And so that's like, I pretty much don't offer to anybody other than my cone patients usually, unless, they've got something else weird going on, like some trauma that created some scarring or something like that.
I think post LASIK is good too, though, because I think I've had a good experience with post LASIK patients that have had issues with like ectasia or poor outcomes.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to is you've got to recognize what the HOA is doing. And in most cases, unless your patient's quite a bit older and they've got internal aberrations that are worth correcting, you've got to have something wrong with the back surface of the cornea.
Right.
And so if you've got a patient where you screen them and the back surface of their cornea looks normal, it's really not going to do much in most cases. So, like you said, post LASIK, but you're talking post LASIK ectasia. You're not talking just good outcome. Post LASIK, they're a little bit regressed. They're a -2 now, and they have this nighttime halos. I mean, that's tough because the lens has a limited optic zone as well. And it's hard to do those. So, but we've got some cases to look at. So.
Yeah. Do you find that I know, Jason, you've worked with a couple different aberrometers. Do you have different thresholds for different instruments? I would say that mine is like that 0.6, 0.7 as well, sometimes 0.5, depending on the patient personality and goals. But do you notice a difference, or is it kind of like, gosh, it's pretty consistent across all instruments?
No, honestly, we look at HOAs with different instruments, but we only use one for correcting HOAs.
Sure.
And so, and to be honest, if we want to be accurate, right, it's less about the total HOAs and more about whether you have one or two HOAs that are off the board.
Yeah,
right.
Because you could have somebody whose RMS is like 0.6, and you've got one, like their vertical
spread out,
like off the board.
Yeah.
And everything else is normal, and you're like, yes, I can correct that vertical coma perfectly.
Yeah.
But if you got somebody who's like 0.7, 0.8, but like one of them's off a little bit up, one's a little down, and everything is just kind of off. It's like those you just don't usually get quite the outcomes that you do when you've got one or two that are really bad, and you can correct those ones that are way off the charts.
Right.
When you guys screen your patients, are you dilating them?
I'm not. I'm putting them in a really, really dark room, and I can usually get their pupil to like 6.5 in my pre-test room. So I'm not. It
depends on the patient. It depends on if they're young enough. And I'm with you. I put them in a dark room, and then on top of it, we have like a black, hood, cover that we put over their heads, and I have like someone else hold it, so it literally like encompasses them in this black hood. And so we try to get as dark as we can. On occasion, we have a patient who come in and it's at the end of their exam and they were dilated for their visit.
Yeah.
And we start talking about it at that point, then that's nice. So, I mean, I haven't been either. We try to get them as big as they can through putting them in a dark room and hooding them completely. I know people advocate for it. I'm not saying that there aren't times when I wish I would have them dilated, but it's just a time thing a lot of times.
I mean, here's my devil's advocate. Like, when in the real world are they walking around with their pupil dilated?
Yeah.
Like, do I care about the aberrations that happen when their pupils at an 8 millimeter when it's never at an 8 millimeter? I mean, that's just kind of my.
Yeah, if the patient's complaining of night vision, driving issues, halos at night, maybe,
Yeah.
but then they're not going to notice much of a help with that lens other than that very specific time. So you're going to go through all this, and during the day when their pupil is not dilated from night vision, they're going to be like, I don't see any better with this.
Yeah.
And it's only going to be at night. And then, of course, the other part of that, too, again, is depending on their age, if you start correcting stuff like spherical aberrations, they might see better at night, but they might complain. It's like, I can't read as well with these. Because you corrected other aspects of the vision that they were. So that's where I just don't love those. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I'm just saying that the patients, again, the patients with a lot of coma and just the, trefoil patients, the lower order, higher orders, when they're high, they tend to do better.
Yeah. That's the example I have is a coma patient. Those are like the easiest ones I feel like, to correct. I would want to pop that guy up.
Yeah, I will pop that guy up.
Yeah, so this was a keratoconus patient I've been seeing. He's 72, so he is older. He does have some mild cataracts. And it's funny because 3 years ago, he watched a lecture from John Gellies about HOA correction. And he came in and he was like, I want an HOA lens. And I'm like, okay, I know you want that. I don't have the technology for it. I don't think anybody really in Michigan was doing it. But I said, it'll be first on my list when I finally get it. So when I finally get it, he came in immediately. But we had a really, really good outcome for him. So his right eye got to 20/20 from 20/40. His left eye got to 20/40 from 20/60. Mm-hmm. But look at how much of an improvement he had. 80% so nice in that left eye. But like Jason was saying, it's those big peaks, right?
Yeah.
So for him, it was the coma. And they just crushed the heck out of the coma.
And what was his diagnosis? Was he a cone, you said?
He has keratoconus, and it's a lot worse in the left eye. And he was so happy, but he's like, the main thing is that for him, I just want to be able to track my golf ball better, because he's retired now. So he was super happy, and he loved it. He took pictures of his graphs. He wants me to, I'm going to actually be doing a poster at GSLS, so come see me. He wants me to send him a picture of, of the poster and everything. So he's excited to be part of the new wave. But I also thought it was just so funny that he's like, I watched a man named John Gellies give a lecture. And I'm like, yes, that is technology that's coming. And I'm just happy to be able to provide it in the Metro Detroit area, just because this area has a need. But man, I've had really good outcomes, especially with my cones.
Yeah. And again, this one is a perfect example because, again, you've got on the right, I've got that one peak of vertical coma that is 4 times more than any other aspect. And you just about nailed it. Like there's only a sliver residual after it's corrected. So all that other stuff along the way is kind of whatever.
Yeah. It gets down to the subclinical. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got some peaks there, not just the vertical coma, what else spherical aberrations look like. And you took care of, again, the vast majority of his aberrations. So that left eye is still only 20/40. Is there other, does he got scar?
Cataract.
Oh, cataract, yeah.
I mean, he's 72. He hasn't had cataract surgery yet. So
in either eye or?
He hasn't had surgery in either eye. So I don't know if it's necessarily a 20/40 cataract or the fact that he's just had advanced keratoconus since his 20s. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the.
Well, it's interesting that his spherical aberration is so much higher in the left eye, and that eye doesn't. I mean, that could be the cataract. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that's an indication that his left eye needs cataract surgery sooner than you think, huh?
He was just he's so happy now. So we'll see.
I find that cataract surgery and cones earlier than later makes a big difference in vision quality. Number one. Number two, I want to jump in. and ask you guys a question about power changes. Something that I've observed is most of the time you get an HOA lens and then the power changes. And so you have to, sometimes it takes like an extra lens after that. And so if you have any tips on like being proactive ahead of time to minimize remakes with the HOA lenses afterward. And number 3, I have a hard stop at the top of the hour. We have a community event going on despite being our first blizzard. So I have to jump off, but I think a big tip on making the process efficient is what can you do before you get the HOA lens to try and minimize remakes afterwards from a power perspective. Yep. And with that, I'm going to sign off. It's great to see you guys, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.
You too.
Bye,
have a great afternoon. Yeah. So to address what Brooke was saying, I think obviously the best case scenario is when you have a patient who's already in a lens and they're just coming back for their annual checkup, generally happy, fit is great, everything's stable. The headaches are when you have to start from scratch. You fit somebody in a brand new lens, they've never worn sclerals, or they wore a brand that didn't come in HOA and you're switching them to another brand.
Yeah.
And you've got to go through the whole fit process first. And of course, with an HOA lens, you have far less room for error with your fit. It's got to be rotationally stable. If I don't have an HOA correcting lens, maybe I don't have to have it be rotationally stable, and I don't really care.
Right.
As long as the patient's happy. But with an HOA lens, it's got to be. So the good ones are when the patient comes in like, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. And you're like, you're only 20/30 though. I got something better for you now. Like, okay, cool. And I think those are your sweet, again, home runs where you don't have to refit them. If you do anything, you tweak the fit and then you just scan them. But what about prescribing, what about correcting their prescription, Jamie? What do you find?
So the hard part is, some of the patients that I've been seeing that were pretty happy already had like front torics powers because we were trying to minimize as much as we could. And then I think sometimes that ends up needing to be taken off once we have the HOA correction in there. So then when I'm starting someone from scratch, it's like, I don't want to put that front toric power on there, but then they won't wear the lens to try out the fit because they can't see.
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm having an issue with a current patient right now. It's like, he can't take the lens because the power isn't sufficient. But then if I put the front toric power on there, then we're going to have to it takes longer. So I guess I haven't figured out a good protocol with that either. I know some of the labs will do like what's called a training lens, and then they use that lens while you get the fit going, but then they have to send a dotted lens afterwards, and then you start the HOA optics later. What do you do with front toric powers?
I'm kind of the same. I mean, like if I feel like if I can order them a lens without adding toricity first, like let's say we fit them and we overfract them, we find a Buckasil, and with it they're 20/25 minus, but without it they're 20/40 plus. It's like, all right, I'm going to order it without. If we're doing the HOA, if we know we're doing the HOA, I mean, obviously I wouldn't do that if I wasn't doing an HOA lens. But if the patient can't function without the toric, you're probably going to need some of that sil anyway. So I would just put it on, or just put on 2/3 of what you measure, enough to get them in the ballpark. I don't find, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't find a lot of times that we're taking out sil that we previously had in. Maybe a little bit, but I feel like even when we prescribe the cylinder and then we do HOA correction over it, that most of the time the sil stays there, most of it at least. So I guess, again, I would treat it kind of like I would any other patient, that if I thought that adjusting the fit was going to improve the aberration situation or the cylinder situation, I wouldn't put those things in until my fit was good.
Right.
But again, we've talked about this too, and this is something I think everybody who fits sclerals should come to understand. If you have a patient who you put on a lens and it rotates 20 degrees to the right, let's say, that tells you where the flat and steep meridian of the eye is. If you then over-refract that patient and find whatever over-refraction axis 20, that's a fit-related over-refraction. Right. You should not put that in their prescription until you get the fit right. If the lens rotates 20 to the right so that the flat meridian is sitting at axis 20, and you over-refract them and get axis 80, that's not related to the fit. That's residual cylinder, and they need it, and you should put
Right.
some in their lens from the get-go. And so I think it's just about using some common sense about what do I think this sill is from. Again, if the cylinder axis pretty much matches the flat meridian axis of your lens rotation, that's a fit-related overrefraction, and that's going to change as you get the fit better. But if it's not, if it doesn't line up with your major meridians, then it's not related to the fit. Usually it's the eye, and you should probably put some in there to begin with.
Yeah, and what I do a lot too now, I still do retinoscopy, but I've started doing autos over the lens more to get the auto Ks.
Yeah.
Because then the Ks over the lens will tell me, like, is the lens flexing?
Yeah.
How much and how much? Is it like a diopter? And then that's what I'm refracting is a diopter, and it's at that same axis as the auto Ks, then I know that's a lens thing. You know,
Yeah.
if the Ks are spherical and then they still have like 2 diopters still, you know, probably more of a, yeah. So I've just started doing that as my standard protocol to do an auto just to get the Ks.
Yeah.
Like,
And
that's all I care about.
to that end, another little tip is when you do auto refract and auto Ks, do not tell the patient open wide. Because if they open their eyes really wide, they're going to take the lid pressure off the lens, and it's going to reduce the flexure. You want them to just be natural. Just look at the target. Just relax. Look at the target. You want them to be as natural as they can during that capture to see if you're getting flexure of the lens or not.
That's a good tip.
So,
But going back to the power changes, what I have personally found is that I think a lot of times we tend to either over or under correct the power just based on trying to compensate these HOAs. So I've just been planting the seed to my patients that once these optics are put on there, I might need to change your base power by like a half. Because sometimes they'll be like, it seems a lot better, but now you can't see your phone. Or, oh, it looks super great up close, but now I can't see far away because they need like a, 3/4 adapter minus. So I'm kind of planting that seed to them so that they understand that the lens, it's working. And then I also like to show them, like, look how much your correction is. You improve by like 50%. And then I just do a loose lens, like over refraction. And they're like, wow, that's going to be amazing. So that way they're not like bummed out that they just spent all this money on this lens and they waited. And now it's like, oh, I still can't see anything, or it looks worse, So I plant that seed early, but that was something I had to learn along the way because no one had ever told me that the whole power might be off by like half to 3/4 to a whole diopter of power.
Yeah, we do definitely get residual over refraction powers once we put the HOA optics on. And I would say that a lot of time when we get a patient back to dispense or they pick up their HOA lens, obviously we always scan them for residual HOAs over that lens again to see what's there. That probably if the vision with the HOA lens is not as impressive as you expected, it could very well be, and I think most of the time it is, that the prescription's off, not the HOA correction. So, I was going to go through these couple cases too, just for those who are viewing us on YouTube. And again, these are just some examples. Again, we've done so many of these now. But this is exactly the type of sweet patient that I would go for, and probably you too, Jamie. But this picture on the left is a patient who's already in their scleral, and this is the kind of look we get. And when I see this, when we screen them, it's like, I know this person's going to do great. When you look at the picture on the right, then with the HOAs corrected, this is an HOA correcting lens. You can see that spot of coma just disappears, and obviously the vision's way better. You can see again on the same printout that we looked at a minute ago with your patient. This patient had tons of vertical coma, tons of vertical secondary astigmatism, and trefoil, and those were resolved, and that's why everything looks so great. One more example, again, a cone patient. When you screen and you see that hot yellow spot or whatever your spot looks like, depending on your instrument, that's the sort of thing that if your lens is very stable on the eye, you're going to be able to correct that. And again, an example of the same HOA pattern with the HOA lens on the eye. And again, you can see their issues are mostly resolved. Most of the big peaks are significantly better. And so again, these are just a couple examples. Like this type of eye right here with the yellow spot, the dense yellow spot, and even this one where it's even more decentered. These are the ones that I feel 98% that we're going to get a good outcome with that patient, provided their lens is rotationally stable.
Right.
So,
I mean, and the tough ones are the ones that I almost feel like the harder ones to please are the ones that are now finding me on their own because they know that I offer it and they're kind of borderline. And then you correct them and they're like, I thought it would be better.
yeah. Yeah.
Or they're like, I'm still seeing shadowing, but you've gotten them down to like a subclinical level. And I will tell them that your eye is the same as mine at this point.
Yes, exactly.
I will say your eye would measure the same as mine. And so some of that is just their perception of their vision. And so it's like, I can't see what you're seeing.
Yes.
You're 20/20, your HOA is to subclinical, but you're still feeling like there's a shadow.
Yes.
You know, so some of this is some patients like to just chase perfection. Or they remember what they used to see like 20, 30 years ago, or they think they remember what they used to see like. It's just, those are the hardest ones when they seek you out because they read on the internet that this is going to like change their life.
Yeah. Well, there's a neuroadaptive component to this. We know that. When you've walked around with a warped spot in your vision for 5 years or whatever, your brain adapts to it, and it's going to take a couple of weeks at least to unadapt. It's no different than there's a video out there on YouTube where these guys like test scientific theories and stuff, and they said, they gave an example of this guy who put on a pair of prism glasses that inverted the whole world.
Yeah.
So he put them on and everything looks upside down. And he wore these glasses every day for a week. And he said by a week of wearing these, the world looked normal to him. It didn't look upside down. It looked completely normal, even though the glasses flipped the whole world upside down. He had neuroadapted to what he had been put into within about a week. And, you know, this is the same sort of thing. You've got to tell your patients, you know, if you put them in an HOA lens and you measure them and you can show them a map, just like we're looking at here. Like if I say, this is your old, this is your new, do you see how much cleaner it looks? Even though your vision's not perfect, you've got to go wear this now. And again, A, we've got to make sure it's rotationally stable, but B, if you can prove with a new HOA map that it's a lot better, the patient will eventually come around and they will feel better about it the longer they wear it.
Right. That's why I love showing them the maps, because it's such a subjective thing that this is an objective measurement to say like, this is, you improved.
Yes.
You know, because I've had patients too that are still like 20, 30 and they're still 20, 25-ish. But if you just looked at them on the chart, like, okay, maybe they went down one line, but their HOAs improved by like 70%. Like that's significant, even though they only made one line of improvement.
Yes.
So you really, I show them the maps. It's the same thing like with dry eye. I do the same exact thing with dry eye. I show them their maps of their dry eye, their tear breakup time. But I'm super excited about these HOA lenses. It does take more work and more visits. So just be aware of that if you're bringing it in, that you will have more follow-ups because you'll have the dotted lens and then you'll have the dispensed lens and then a follow-up. So, you know, charge appropriately for that.
And sometimes what will happen too, one thing that's important to know too, is sometimes you are going to have patients where a year or 2 or 3 down the road, they're going to need their fit adjusted. And so when you start changing the fit, it can affect the rotation and position of the lens. And so that's another thing too, I find, is that sometimes you will dispense or a patient will come back 3 years later. Hey, she's back.
I'm back.
You know what you've got to do is you've got to say, you know what, we're going to tweak your fit and I'm going to reorder your new lens, but this new lens is not going to have your aberration correction on it. We're going to just dot it and we're going to get you a new lens, make sure the fit is good. Then I'm going to reorder it. We're going to rescan you and we're going to update your aberration correction. And then I'll just mail you that lens or whatever. And so I've had to do that a handful of times in the last couple of years as patients are coming back for annual exams down the road. If you're going to change things about the lens, sometimes you got to back off, pull off the HOA correction first. And then once you've got the fit, again, tweaked the way you want it, you can rescan them and put new aberration correction on it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, this is perfect, Brooke. You're back in time just to say goodbye.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I was lucky enough to just chat on the radio a little bit. The one of our local radio gals finds myopia control just fascinating, so I got to talk about myopia control for 10 minutes on the radio. So that was fun.
What
but
a
anyway,
celebrity.
You know what? You know what I think is really interesting? Like the longer you do it, like in the beginning, it's so neat to be invited to conferences and, do things for, present to other optometrists. But now I'm actually really enjoying sort of like the local stage, if you would. Like, I'm really enjoying like getting to know some of the local leaders and talking like the Lions Club recently and people who make a difference around us. I just have really almost found that like just as joyful as, traveling abroad and, speaking at the national meetings. It just kind of like you were saying, like the community has a need and like you're bringing something to it. Like you were saying earlier, Jamie. So that has been, and then you get to sleep in your own bed too, which is, but again, yeah, really nice. So, well, I hope you guys had a great conversation about being efficient, and
we can watch it later.
Yeah, I will. I'll take notes and then come back. I'll maybe even send in my own cases of some of my troubleshooting HOA patients. But great to see you all again. And maybe we'll get one episode in before Christmas. We'll do our best to do that. But if not, perhaps we'll see you you'll definitely see us in the new year. But hopefully we see you all again before that. So thanks for joining us for another episode.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.
See you.